Hello, my name is Virginia Alensao. I am the chair of the Philippine Nurses Association of America Global Affairs Committee. It is our privilege to be a part of the Consular Office of the Philippine Embassy to participate in this post-arrival orientation seminar for new professional nurses coming to the U.S. I'd like to go over the stages of cultural adaptation because it's important for you to be able to label the experiences and the emotions that you go through as you adapt to a new culture in America. So the first stage is the honeymoon stage. So as you all experience, and I'm sure since you have just recently arrived, there's so much excitement and fascination with the new culture, new buildings, new smell, new activities around you. And your sense of success of being in a new place and a new culture, you work so hard to get to this point, and you finally realize, oh my God, I have made it. And again, the novelty of the new environment. If you came from a big city in the Philippines, it still is a new adjustment. If you came from the provinces, this novelty of the new environment is very new to you. The anticipation of the opportunities waiting for you in your new culture is also evident during this time. You're excited, you're finally realized your dream, and you have made the first step to make it to America. And you are feeling energetic and enthusiastic during this stage. Everything is new, everything is exciting, everything is like, it's great. So this is basically, you are at this honeymoon stage when the excitement, and the sense of success and absorbing everything in your new environment take hold. Okay, the culture shock stage, which is considered the crisis stage, is probably the most important stage that you have to pay attention to. In this stage, the primary focus is on the differences between one's own culture and the new culture and the conflicts that arise due to these differences. So for a Filipino nurse, the examples we will cite is you have to speak in a foreign language at all times. So we encourage Filipino nurses to speak English at all times, whether they're in the break room with other Filipino nurses, because that's the only way you can practice your English. And sometimes the struggle is not being understood when you express yourself in your own usual way. We Filipinos can talk to each other and sometimes they finish your sentence for you. But when you are in a new environment, they pay attention to your words and to your how you express yourself. And sometimes we struggle with that. And that's why it's very important for you to practice that skill at the very early stage. And sometimes we're not sure of how to interact with people in authority. How do you, here in the US, they're so informal. So you call your manager by their first name. Sometimes the staff, your American counterparts, would call the physician by their first name, whereas for us in the Philippines, we address them, your supervisor as Mrs. or Miss, and the physician as doctor. Here, you'll be surprised sometimes that they go by the first name basis. And to this day, I still address physicians as doctor, or I may call my boss by their first name because I'm more comfortable in a personal relationships with them. And how to make friends with people from different cultures and backgrounds. You're very comfortable being with Filipinos, but now you're in a completely different environment. So therefore, you have to make time and you have to force yourself to interact and to make friends with people of different backgrounds and different, especially coming from completely different cultural backgrounds. Because it's important for you to understand them and for them to understand you. It goes both ways. And sometimes you feel that the people in a new place are impatient when you do not understand things right away. It takes a while for us sometimes to grasp what they're trying to say, or sometimes for them to grasp what we are trying to say. So it's important that you again, you practice your English so that you can express yourself clearly, and you could be easily understood. Okay, so there's another continuation of the crisis stage. Example you will encounter also is creating a physical space. We Filipinos we're so used to hugging and touching and everything. So you need to recognize, and some cultures they prefer to create a physical distance. So be cognizant of that environment. Food and eating customs are different. They eat different food. Their serving portions are different. And one of the things I always wanted to stress for the Filipino nurses, is when you bring your baon from home, make sure you, especially if you're eating fish, do not warm your food in the microwave because it will stink the whole place. That's what one of the complaints that the American nurses would say. Not just for the Filipinos, but anybody who bring food, like especially fish or some food that is highly seasoned, you do not microwave it at work. Serving portions here are huge. I remembered when the first group of Filipino nurses came, usually we would order one entree and two people can eat it. But I bet you nowadays they can probably eat it all by themselves. So you can tell that they are adapting to this new culture. And feelings that accompany the culture shock stage may include confusion, anxiety, homesickness, which is very, very common, especially when it's your first time to be away from home, feeling overwhelmed, feeling angry because of whatever encounter you have at work, feeling lonely, which is along with your being homesick. And sometimes, no matter how good you were back home, you come to this new place and you feel like you're starting all over and you feel less competence. Being fearful of the unknown. And basically, all of a sudden, you're bombarded with all these new rules and expectations and everything that you are unfamiliar with. And some people, maybe at this stage, were wondering, should I have left or should I have done this venture? But also feeling unsure whether to stay or go back to one's country of origin. This rarely happened. Almost always every Filipino nurse ended up staying, no matter how much struggle they experienced during this stage. The recovery stage is after spending some time in the new culture, people begin to resolve some of the conflicts they may have experienced and start to regain a sense of appreciation that they might have experienced during the first stage. They have learned about the new culture and can better understand external and internal resources that help manage demands and other conflicts that might arise. Feelings typical of this stage are a mixture of the first two stages. The adaptation stage consists of people developing realistic understanding of the similarities and differences between their home cultures and the new culture to have a clearer ideas of what they like and dislike in each. Many people move in the direction of bicultural, meaning being able to value and appreciate the aspects of both culture that they wish to retain or include in their lives. This stage may be characterized by a sense of confidence, maturity, flexibility, and tolerance. In most cases, when you see nurses I have actually seen nurses who are able to bridge those divides. They come across more confident. They appreciate that in the US culture, to be straightforward and frank is more appreciated than to beat around the bush. And the fact that they are a little bit more mature in the sense that every criticism or comments made towards them are not taken personally. So when you get to the point where you take all those criticism constructive, and even some of that are very nice, you're able to with confidence and with maturity, be able to discern what is the appropriate response to that. Then you know that you have been able to adapt to this adaptation stage of your journey. You become more flexible and you're more tolerant. And again, being able to take all those comments and criticism, not personally, but basically as a way of improving yourself. Reverse cultural shock. I really don't want to talk too much about this. It's because this is probably what you will experience after you have been in America for an extended period of time. And then you go back home and then you start criticizing everything that's not right in your home culture. So I want to focus more on your initial adaptation of life in America. Okay, one of the key points really I want to come across here is the tips for successful cultural adaptation. Learning about and becoming familiar with the US culture and understanding social customs can help with a smoother interaction with colleagues. I hope you have started doing this before we arrive in America, more familiar with the US culture and customs, and especially in the area of how to communicate in English. Spend time listening and talking to colleagues and other people from the US, because I think this piece you're able to tune in to what the nuances of the language. Watch television and read newspapers to obtain information about local and national US culture. Nowadays, with the 24-hour news coverage by CNN or whatever the news PBS or the European, you can basically read about what's going on locally or nationally or worldwide. So be cognizant of what's going on around you. Check with someone if you are unsure about appropriate behavior, language use, and how to say no. This takes time. We Filipinos don't know how to say no. And so many a times it takes practice. It took me a while to say that, because every time I say no, I have to explain myself. So my American colleagues would say, you don't have to explain yourself why you said no. You just say, I'm sorry, I could not join you for dinner, or I could not go to your party. And that's it. That's the end of it. You don't have to give multiple reasons why you cannot come. And sometimes it depends on your locality. You might have different slang languages, some idiomatic expressions. So ask the people what those phrases mean. That's very important. They welcome it, because sometimes they even have fun teaching you all the local slang and idioms. Additional tips include the seek support system among friends, colleagues with whom you feel comfortable sharing your feelings, stressors, and shared experiences. I think this is where seeking out, belonging to the Philippine Nurses Association of America in your chapter, in your state, is important, because they become your support system. Reaching out to some Filipino colleagues in your institution. Because they would be more than happy to help you adapt to whatever, because we all have been through that. So they would be more than happy to assist you with the struggles that you have. Make new friends, not just among Filipinos, but for your American friends. Stay connected with friends and family back home. Nowadays, with the advent of Messenger and Zoom and whatever mode of communication you have, it's cheaper to do that. So make sure you make a regular contact with your friends and family back home, so it cures the homesickness. And if and when you still struggle despite it all, seek professional help if needed. In America, it's accepted. I know that we struggle with that in the Philippines, but in America, almost all organizations will have an employee assistance program where an employee can seek professional help through this program, whether you're struggling with adapting to the new place, whether you are having some relationship problem, you're having some money problem, or whatever problems you have. Seek professional help. So you're and that's usually covered by your insurance. So So seek professional help if you get to the point you feel that you are not able to do that on your own. Major challenges for nurses: adaptation to a new environment. It's your new home, work, and community. So probably the first month of arrival, you get to know your immediate community. Hopefully that also will give you the opportunity to go and do a visit and meet your manager and meet and go and tour the unit where you would be working. The community, where do you go for church? Where do you go to do your grocery shopping? If you have to take public transportation, how do you get from your home to work? So a lot of these are critical things that you need to learn during probably the first month of arrival in the US. So that's, just getting familiar with your apartment is a challenge. And so that's an adaptation piece that probably with the first month you would have to struggle with initially. Again, if your employer should have a resource person for you, whether it's a staffing agency who brought you here or the employer who sponsored you, they should be the people who would be assisting you in some of this adjusting to the new environment. Clinical orientation. By hopefully before you arrive, you would have an outline of your orientation schedule. It's important to note that here you are assigned a preceptor, meaning somebody who's going to be assisting you with making sure that you're clinically competent, and they do the check off. They said, okay, this nurse is able to function this task. And it's important to have a regular evaluation and feedback from your preceptor. And if and when you feel that you need more time for your orientation, feel free to tell your preceptor, because it's critical that you are given additional time if you feel that you needed time for an extended orientation. They all want you to succeed. So it's very important that this orientation is included. One of the key pieces of the struggles that Filipino nurses have is the use of the information technology. It's because in the US, we record everything electronically. So if you have never done an electronic documentation, charting, then you might need a little bit more time during this phase. Communication, written and verbal. Speak English at home and at work. Mingle with non-Filipino coworkers to practice your English skills. When I would do the recruitment in the Philippines, I make it to the point that any communication with me has to be done in English, complete sentences, not the text message kind of format. Because if you send it to me and it's in a shortened abbreviation English, I would send it back to you and make you repeat it. The reason I do that is because I want you to start learning how to say things properly and clearly. Be observant. Ask question if you do not understand the slang or idiomatic expressions. I already told you that. There are so many expressions here that sometimes, you look at you don't understand what they're trying to say. Read magazines and journals regularly. It is important because it helps you have an understanding of how things are expressed and how they are written. And watch English TV shows and news. I know that sometimes it's great to be listening to the Filipino channels, but please, make sure you also spend time watching the English TV shows and newscasts. Use of technology, I briefly mentioned about that, specifically documentation. If you're using Epic or whatever, Cerner, whatever information application you're using at work, you need to be familiar with those. Privacy and confidentiality. You would be required to take those courses on how to maintain privacy and confidentiality of your patient information or coworkers' information, actually, because that is very important. It's a critical piece. for if you are working in a healthcare field. And social media etiquette. Sometimes you guys get carried away and you just take pictures and post it on the Facebook. It is bad, especially if you're showing a patient's face in your Facebook account. That's an absolute no-no. So we need to be able, and most organizations probably would introduce you to what are those social media etiquette that you should do. But you never post anything that is at work with people's faces, with staff faces, unless they gave you permission to do so. Standards of care. Be familiar with your state Nurse Practice Act, your institution standards of care, and also the specialty standards of care. Because each organization may have, in addition to the standard practice act of your state, may have also specific standards of what to follow when it comes to your institution's policies and procedures. Actually, what I just went over are just this very summary of what all of us have to struggle in order to adapt to a new environment. Also, keep in mind that adapting to a new culture takes time, and the pace of transition varies from person to person. Some of us may be able to adapt to go through this phase of, culture shock in a short order, and some people may struggle a little bit longer. And that's okay, because I think it's also dependent upon how the person transition from one stage to another. So be patient with yourself. And again, seek a support system who can help you navigate this tremendous transition that you are making. One of the pieces that we have done, which I hope by now will be posted in the PNAA website, is we published the first edition handbook for Filipino nurses immigrating to the US. It should be in the PNAA.org website. It will help you, even if it talks about when you're beginning your journey, but it talked a little bit more about the cultural adaptation and some of the practical tips that would be important for you to learn, and also to guide you as you make the life in America a smoother transition for you and your family. So again, welcome to the United States of America. Welcome to PNAA. We're here to help you make this transition smoother. Thank you.